Okay, so I hope everyone had a good summer so far. Still got a little bit of summer left, but I guess no time like the present. So the Indian that I'd like to speak about for maybe the next few weeks is the topic of gugulim. The topic of gugulim. It's a very very interesting thing because it's something that many people don't know a lot about. The concept of reincarnation, maybe people are from the concept maybe people have heard of, but the details of how it works and why it happens and so on, people are not that familiar with. And the truth is, it could be a source of tremendous chizuk. Tremendous chizuk. Now, what's interesting is, just by the way, on the side, the the concept of reincarnation, the concept of gugulim, was not something. It was a concept that not all in our history have agreed to. We know that famously those tzaddikim that were not part of the tradition of Kabbalah, which we've talked about in the past at length, about this idea that there were certain that Kabbalah and its mysteries and the mysteries of Torah were kept in a certain in a certain secret way, and not everyone was exposed to that. So those tzaddikim throughout history that were not exposed to Kabbalah looked at reincarnation as a concept that's foreign to Yiddishkeit, that's coming from the idolatry and the nations of the world, other religions, and they looked at it as something that was not part of true Torah Judaism. However, in Pnimis Torah, when Kabbalah is revealed, we see clearly, even going back to the Zohar Kadosh itself, that the concept of Gugulim is a very major part of Yiddishkeit, a very major part of Yiddishkeit. And as we'll see very clearly over the next few weeks, B'ez Hashem, this concept, it's not just a theoretical thing out there. It's something that's very, very part of us, our day-to-day lives. We'll see, I'll explain as we go on. So what's interesting is that despite the fact that, the Baal Shem Tov, for example, and his students were so rooted in the writings of Kabbalah and were so rooted in the writings of the Arizal, it's interesting to note, this is just parenthetically, that the concept of reincarnation is really not talked about in the Hasidic form at all. Very rarely. A little here, a little there, a vart here and a vart there. But as far as the concept of reincarnation being part of one's focus in Avodas Hashem, that's something that we find in the writings of the Arizal, and it's something we find by the Sephardim Mekubalim, but not so much by the Hasidim. It's interesting. The truth is, to explain that, there's even a story about reincarnation to explain that. The Baal Shem Tov once revealed that, even though, again, like I mentioned, this was not a focus in Avodas Hashem by the Arizal, but the Arizal did know these things. The Arizal revealed once that he was a reincarnation of Reb Saji Gaon, or the great Reb Saji Gaon, one of the Gaonim, one of the greatest Gaonim who lived post-Talmudic era. Now, Reb Saji Gaon was not privy to Kabbalah. He did not know Kabbalah and the secrets of Torah, and Reb Saji Gaon didn't believe in reincarnation. So it's an interesting concept that you have this idea that sort of runs through the lifetimes. That in the first lifetime, this neshama did not believe in reincarnation in Reb Saji Gaon, and in its second lifetime, this soul in the Baal Shem Tov believed in reincarnation, but it still wasn't a focus in his Avodas Hashem. Despite the fact that, as I said, that in Hasidus we don't find Gugulim to be really talked about at length, nevertheless, there's a tremendous amount of chizuk that can be drawn from these concepts, and as we'll see very soon. So just to lay down certain basic principles of how Gugulim work. In general, there are two different types of Gugulim. There are two different types of reincarnation. There's the one standard, I guess the run-of-the-mill, more common reincarnation, which is that a person is born with an old soul. A person is born, his name is Yaakov Schwartz, but really the neshama that he was given in that body, named Yaakov Schwartz, in the year 2014, is an older soul that really was here, in 1392 by some Jew in Morocco. That's reincarnation. That a person is born, a soul comes back down and is born again in a new body. That's reincarnation. That's the general concept. That's the simple reincarnation. There's another type of reincarnation which I want to talk about first, which is the concept called an ibur neshama, or an impregnated neshama. The Arizal taught there is such a thing. That a person, let's give an example, Yaakov Schwartz. Yaakov Schwartz has his soul, he has a personal soul, he has his life, and so on. There is such a thing that in the middle of Yaakov Schwartz's life, another soul will be impregnated within him. So, for example, Yaakov Schwartz will be walking down Main Street, and all of a sudden, without him realizing it, the soul of even Rabbi Kiva, that would be a tremendous chus if that happened to him. But let's say the soul of Rabbi Akiva enters into his body. This is a certain type of reincarnation. He is still Yaakov Schwartz. He still has his soul that he had from birth. But right now, for whatever reason, as I'll explain in a moment, another soul becomes impregnated within him. Now, why would that ever happen? So it would happen for one of two reasons. We see this very often with people. Sometimes a person is ordered, or just without having any real way to explain it, is somehow inspired to be Moshe Nefesh, to really have some amount of self-sacrifice for a certain mitzvah, for a certain inyan. So, for example, a person, let's say a person is about tshuva, he's in the process of becoming from, and there's a certain issue that's standing in front of his way. He's having a problem with kashrus. He's having a problem with kashrus, of giving up whatever food that he grew accustomed to over the course of his youth. And that's something that he's struggling with. And then all of a sudden, something, a snap, something happens within him. He finds within him that strength to overcome that issue. Or that's one example. Or any other thing. Let's say a person is a regular, not about tshuva, a person is a regular from birth, normal, regular Jew. And, it's one of these things that all of us, davening is something that he struggles with. Whether it's going to shul or just having kavanah when a person is davening and so on. And then all of a sudden he finds within him the strength to overcome and to conquer that area of Yiddishkeit that for 20, 30 years he's having a hard time with. Why would that happen? So said the Arizal, when that happens, that's a very strong sign that he's experiencing right now what's called an Iber Neshama, an impregnation from another soul. What happens is, said the Arizal, when Hashem sees fit that a person is struggling with a certain inyan, and in order to give him an added boost, an added strength to overcome this obstacle, so Hashem will send within him, Hashem will impregnate him with the soul of a tzaddik, and a tzaddik who specifically mastered that thing that he's confronted with right now, and by him being given that additional soul of that tzaddik, that will give him the spiritual boost in order to overcome this issue. So, for example, a story that's talked about this, it was said by the Arizal one time, it's brought down in the storm, that the Arizal one time was giving a shiur to Talmidim, he was teaching his students, and a regular person, an average Yankel, the water carrier, walked by, and the Arizal stood up for Yankel. So it's a strange thing. So the students asked him, why, Rebbe, are you standing up for such a person? He's not a bad person, but he's not, he's not someone that you would regularly stand up for. So the Arizal said that you should know that this person today has been, he was involved for a number of hours collecting money for the mitzvah of Pidyon Shvuyim, for the mitzvah of saving a Jew, collecting ransom for a Jew who was imprisoned by the non-Jews. So the Arizal taught that this person, to give him that strength, to be Moshe Nefesh, to have the conviction, to raise the money that was necessary, Hashem impregnated him with the soul of Rabbi Chanina ben Dosa. Rabbi Chanina ben Dosa was one of the greatest Tanoim. And the Gemara, we find this throughout the Gemara, that Rabbi Chanina ben Dosa's special thing was Pidyon Shvuyim. He spent a lot of time and energy trying to raise money for the sake of redeeming Jews that were imprisoned by the non-Jews. So it said the Arizal, when I stood up for him, I'm not standing up for Yankel, I'm standing up for Chanina ben Dosa, who is contained within Yankel right now. That's a story from the Arizal. That's one reason why this would happen. Again, in other words, to help out Yankel, to help out the average person, to get him over that hump that maybe he's struggling with, or to get into the next level that he's supposed to get to, so Hashem will impregnate him with the soul of a tzaddik. And by the way, the Arizal taught this could happen even with the soul of a tzaddik that's still alive. Meaning, in other words, it doesn't have to be Rav Pinchas ben Dosa from 1,000 years ago coming into Yankel right now. It could happen that even right now, as we speak, Yankel right now could be impregnated with the soul of, let's say, Reb Chaim Kanievsky, if that would somehow get him over the hump. An example of this, of where you have an impregnated soul, but from a tzaddik who's alive at that time. The most famous example, I'd say, if these things were famous, it would be famous. The example of this is Yosef HaTzadik. We know that Yosef had to deal with a tremendous test. He had to overcome the temptation of Eshes Potiphar, his master's wife, Potiphar's wife. So Chazal have revealed to us that he had help. He had some external help in order to get him, in order to give him the strength to overcome that test. What was the external help that helped him? So Chazal already revealed that he saw in the window the image of his father, right? Chazal, Rashi brings it down in Chumash over there, that at that moment when he was confronted with that sin, and it was a very difficult test to deal with, so he saw the image of his father, he remembered his upbringing and so on, and that gave him strength. The Arizal taught that alongside that somewhat external help, there was an internal help that also got him over the hump, which was he experienced what we're talking about in Ibn Neshama. He was impregnated with the soul of the tzaddik to help him get through it. What tzaddik? So the Arizal taught that he was impregnated with the soul of Yitzchak Avinu. That the soul of Yitzchak is Gevurah, Yitzchak is strength, Yirah Shamayim, fear of heaven, in order to withstand, to be able to deal with the Yetzer Hara. So he was given the soul of Yitzchak to help him through. So he had the outer help of the image of Yaakov, and he had the inner help of the soul of Yitzchak Avinu. The Arizal taught this, it's hinted to in the Pasuk. The Pasuk says that Paro gave Yosef a nickname, Sofnas Paneach, which literally means the one who reveals secrets, right? Because he knew the interpretation of Paro's dream. The Arizal taught Sofnas Paneach equals numerically the words Sofun Bo Yitzchak, that contained within him is Yitzchak. So that's what the Arizal taught. Now what's fascinating is, Yitzchak was alive at the time. Yitzchak did not pass away yet. Yitzchak was alive when Yosef was dealing with this test, which means that the concept of Ibor Neshama, of being impregnated by the soul of a tzaddik to help you through, to help you overcome a certain situation, a certain temptation, or whatever the case may be, to allow you to do a mitzvah, could happen even with a tzaddik that's alive at that moment. Now, this is all one reason why this would happen. Again, to help you out to overcome a Yetzer Hara like Yosef, to accomplish a mitzvah like Pidyon Shvuyim, and so on. There's another reason why this would happen, which would be not for you, but for the tzaddik. We know that, it's a famous story with the Gra. The Gra, before he passed away, was crying, and his Talmidim asked him why he's crying, so he picked up his tzitzis, and he said that in this world, for pennies, a person can fulfill mitzvahs, have unbelievable reward, but in the next world, there's nothing to do. You just have the reward that you accomplish down here, but you can't add more mitzvahs. So the Arizal taught that sometimes, for whatever reason, Hashem will give a tzaddik an opportunity to sort of fulfill more mitzvahs even after he passes away, by bringing his soul back down to earth and impregnating him within a person who's doing a mitzvah. So, for example, when that Jew, by the story of the Arizal, was collecting money for Pidyon Shvuyim, and the soul of Rav Pinchas ben Dosa was contained within him, was impregnated within him. So not only did the soul of Rav Pinchas ben Dosa help out Yankel to give him the strength and the drive to collect the money, but it also meant that Rav Pinchas ben Dosa was somewhat involved in a physical mitzvah down here, even though he passed away for 1,000 years already. So therefore, in other words, that situation not only helps Yankel, it also helps Rav Pinchas ben Dosa, because now Rav Pinchas ben Dosa, when his neshama goes back to Shemayim, he now has a little bit more mitzvahs than he started with, because again, you can't say that he's the only one that did the mitzvah, but he definitely had a hand in it, and therefore, so this concept of an Ibn Neshama, it's a helpful relationship both ways. It helps the person that's receiving the neshama. It also helps the tzaddik that his neshama was put into this person. Now, but just on the side, there's a very interesting thing. The Arizal taught that generally speaking, reincarnation is more common in men than women. This is something we'll talk about, maybe as we go along. Much more common in men. And why is that? This is an interesting thing. The Arizal said that, as we'll see soon, regular reincarnation is very much, the reason for it, generally speaking, is because something went wrong in the first lifetime that has to be fixed. So we know that there's different ways for Hashem to fix things. So one way is reincarnation. Hashem gives you a second opportunity to fix it. And we'll talk about this in much more greater detail as we go on. Another way for Hashem to fix a mistake that a person made is lo leinu Gehenna, to go through Gehenna. So the Arizal taught that men who, even if a person's not a Torah scholar, a person's not a rabbi, every adult Jewish male should preferably learn a little bit every day. Every Jewish male learns somewhat. So the Arizal, even the Torah that a person learns, even if a person's not a great big Talmud Chacham, any learning a person does already means that his neshama doesn't go to Gehenna. because the light of Torah Seder Rizal protects the soul from the fires of Gehenna. And therefore, Seder Rizal, it's more likely that Hashem will take a male soul in order to fix a mistake and to send him back down for reincarnation, as opposed to going to Gehenna, because the light of Torah will protect him, as opposed to a woman who, generally speaking, does not learn as much as a man, will be more likely to fix her mistakes, or more likely to go to Gehenna than being sent back down. However, said the Rizal, this concept of an Ibra Neshama, of an impregnated Neshama, that's for women too. So Rizal thought about just the fascinating thing, just completely on the side. What happens with a woman who, let's say, Rachel is alive right now, she's struggling with the mitzvah of lighting candles. Okay, that's the thing she's trying to get over, she's trying to accomplish. So Hashem sends the soul of, some tzaddikus from 1,000 years ago to help out Sarah. Now, let's say Sarah right now is pregnant. She's physically pregnant with a baby. So the Rizal taught a fascinating thing, that generally speaking, women will not have reincarnation. However, if a woman, let's say Sarah, who's pregnant with a baby inside, becomes pregnant again with the soul of a tzaddikus from 100 years ago, if the baby inside is a girl, it's very likely that that baby will be the reincarnation of that soul from that tzaddikus 100 years ago. So in other words, that's just completely on the side, just an interesting tidbit of information, But again, for these things, to know the details, this is what much is written about this in the writings of the Rizal. But anyway, this is as far as the first type of reincarnation, which is called an Ibra Neshama. So like I said, if a person finds himself in a situation in life where, he's struggling with a certain thing, but all of a sudden one day he finds he has the strength to overcome it, it's not a small thing. It's not a small thing, and it could be coming from a very, very big place. And so the reason when a person experiences that, he has to really hold on tight, because it might not come again. But Hashem sends the soul of tzaddik into you, or into us, in order to give us strength. It's an opportunity that might not come for a very long time. So you have to hold on. And so the reason, if a person uses the opportunity properly and fulfills the mitzvah and overcomes that obstacle, using that added soul of a tzaddik that Hashem has given him, then said the Rizal, now even if the soul of tzaddik then leaves after that mitzvah is gone, the person could be completely changed. And that person can now reach levels in his Yiddishkeit that he would be unable to reach before this. So it's a tremendous opportunity. Again, that's why when the person has an awakening, if it has an isorus to become better, it's not just practically a good idea to hold on to it, because who knows when it's going to come back. There are big things taking place. When a Jew has an isorus, when a Jew has an awakening to do tshuva, to become better, it's big things happening. We have no idea the workings of the soul, what's taking place. And at that moment, we could be connecting to some of the greatest tzaddikim of all time. And if we use that opportunity properly, then said the Rizal, you could eventually get an Olam Haba to reach that tzaddik's level. So in other words, if a person is being impregnated with the soul of Rabbi Akiva, the person uses that opportunity properly, then he could literally reach an Olam Haba. Said the Rizal, you could literally reach an Olam Haba, the level of Rabbi Akiva, if you use that opportunity properly. So again, that's just number one. This is all one type of Gilgul, which is called the Ibra Neshama, or an impregnated soul. Again, that's just that. If there's any questions, then please feel free.
All right, I'm going to unmute everybody, so in case anybody has any questions, please go ahead. Anyone?
Okay.
Okay, so we'll pick it up Mitzvah Hashem next week. Shkoyach Yossi.
Yeah, pleasure.